Welcome to the Forever Free Space podcast. I am your host, Joyce Van Setters.
I am Pete Moriello, broker associate.
And together we put this together for aspiring current entrepreneurs to get tips from thought leaders in their industry. Today we're excited because we have one of those thought leaders in-house, former NFL running back who spent 10 years of his career with the Giants, now author, entrepreneur, national media presence, and half of the sports radio show Evan and Tiki.
That's right.
Kinky Barber.
Right, you almost got
better
it right.
known to the world as Tiki.
A team.
Kiambu.
The only a team now is my son. I've never used the name.
Never?
There's a couple guys that called me a team. Greg Camella, my fullback.
Okay.
Pat Hanlon over at the New York Giants, who said of
Really?
media, he would call me a team. But most people, it was always Tiki.
I love that
Nice.
name. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it's like fiery
tempered king.
tempered fire king.
Fiery tempered
I heard a
king.
story because you were screaming
Yeah.
when you came out.
Yeah, me and my twin were preemies, and so
Yes.
we were in
wow.
incubators
Okay.
for just a week or so. And
Mhm.
my mom always said that we were screaming our heads off, and I was pulling at the
Let me outta here.
all the wires and stuff on my face. And so an exchange student that they knew from Zaire named us. So my brother is
Oh,
Jamello Ronde,
Oh, okay.
and that means firstborn son.
Love that.
And my name is Ateem Kiambu, which
I
means
love that.
fiery tempered king.
Well, better
that's
to
really
known
cool.
to the world as Tiki.
Yep.
Tiki Barber, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joyce. Pleasure.
Welcome.
See you guys.
Now, for those who have been under rocks since 1997 or just not born, tell us where you're from, Tiki.
A lot of those people just aren't born.
Yeah.
You're absolutely
Exactly,
right. You get these
exactly.
2000 babies. It's
Yeah.
like, what? I was
I
already
know.
out of college and a couple of years in the league by then. I was born in Roanoke, Actually, I was born in Blacksburg, Virginia,
Okay.
Montgomery County Hospital, because my mom and dad were students, or they had graduated from Virginia Tech, and my dad was working for the football team. So I was born in Montgomery County, Virginia.
Okay.
But I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, which is just up the road, about
Yeah.
40 miles or so. And
Okay.
it's a great place to grow up. It was quiet. It's the star city of the South, so that we like to call ourselves, because there was a big star on top of Mill Mountain down there. And it was easy. There was nothing to get in trouble with. And I think that's why I enjoyed growing up in the Southwest of Virginia.
You went to college, Virginia, as well, the
Yep,
Cavaliers.
went to UVA.
Okay.
Nice.
It was great at UVA. We chose it because it felt the safest of all of the schools. And I don't mean in a dangerous way, but we knew we would be able to do whatever we wanted athletically.
Right.
So they were going to let us run track and play football. A lot of schools just want you to do one.
Right, that's true.
But also, it was academically right where we wanted to be. And it was close.
Perfect.
It was far enough away, but close enough.
Close enough. That's nice.
And you played there for 3 years.
4
not
years.
4. Oh, you did 4 years?
Yeah, I did 4 years. My brother did 3.
Okay.
Because he redshirted his first year.
Got it.
And so he let's see, he hurt his elbow, then he redshirted, and then he came out and he was freshman of the year, ACC rookie of the year, led the nation in interceptions.
Wow.
And so he was great right away. It took me a little while to find my footing,
But you did.
but I did.
But you
ultimately.
did, and
Right.
you were drafted in
Yeah.
1997, second round, 36th pick.
Came to New York, and I'm lucky is the wrong word. I think I was just ready for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Because Rodney Hampton was the starting running back when I
Yeah.
got drafted.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of the third down back. I was
Right.
going to fill this Dave Meggett type of role.
Right.
And then 2 weeks in the camp, his knee just locked up, and
Oh,
it hit,
yeah.
and it was just bad. He couldn't run, couldn't practice. And I remember my running back coach, Jim Skipper, coming up to me is like, Teek, you can learn the playbook. You're going to start.
Oh,
I
wow.
was like, what? I was like, all right. So I ended up starting my first game,
Wow.
which was great.
And Rodney, didn't he just retire after that or something like that?
He retired the year after that.
Wow.
And so,
Your time.
yeah, it was
Oh,
good
that's
timing.
cool.
It was lucky timing for me.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tyrone Wheatley was there.
hmm
Mhm.
Then I had some adversity. I got hurt my knee, tore my PCL my rookie season, and
Right.
slowed me down. Tyrone took all the reps, and eventually I found my way back to it, but it took some time.
Yeah. And then when you came back, you had like the rushing yard time of your life.
Yeah, it took a while though. I mean, by 2000 is when I really figured it out. But part of that was learning how to be healthy
Yeah.
and learning how to take care of my body.
hmm
And
What does that
and be
entail?
available. Well, it's a lot of things. It's nutrition. It's it's massage
Yeah.
and acupuncture. It's a mental well-being as well. But for me, the biggest difference was I found a strength trainer who was just a maniac. His name was Joe Carini. And I mean, I knew how to lift heavy because I had a good strength coach at UVA, John Gamble, who was, he competed in those World's Strongest Man competitions back in the 60s and 70s. And so I knew how to lift properly, but I just was never motivated. And then I met Joe Carini, who was New Jersey's Strongest Man, and he made me like this specimen. I got up to like 212 pounds, 15 pounds. I weigh 190 now, which is normal for me.
So Tiki, in college, was it more, the training was more football related strength training?
Well, it was, but I was also running track.
Oh, okay.
And so while I needed to get stronger and bigger, I didn't want to be over 200 pounds. I wanted to be fast. I wanted to be I was a long jumper. I wanted to be able to jump and triple jump and do all these things. And so I was like serving two athletic masters, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's so funny because running backs today are built so different.
Oh, of course they are. They are. A lot of these guys, some of these guys are 180 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, they're little. They're like Tony Dorsett was back in the 70s and 80s.
That's a perfect example.
Right. He was 178 pounds, Tony Dorsett. As good as he was, people didn't realize how small he was.
Right.
And then for about 2 decades, the running back became 6'4", like 230 pounds. Yeah. And then it started to like shrink down again.
Down a little bit.
And then a lot of it was because running backs are kind of quasi wide receivers in today's NFL. Yeah. And so you got to be able to be agile and do both things, catch the ball and run the ball. So.
Right. Now you were one of 4 players that had the 5,000 receiving and 5,000 rushing yards, right?
No. I was one of 3 with 10,000 rushing and 5,000 yards receiving. Myself, Marshall Falk, and Marcus Allen.
I remember Marcus Allen.
I mean, I credit Marshall a lot because before he exploded, he was good in Indianapolis, but then he went to St. Louis, the Rams, and they became the greatest show on turf.
Yeah.
Those with Kurt Warner and Torrey Holt and those guys, they were amazing. But the running that team had their running back do everything.
Wow.
And so my position coach, or offensive coordinator, I should say, Sean Payton, recognized that and said, I can use Tiki like that. And so that's how my career took off. Is that Sean Payton, who was familiar with Marshall Falk from his college days, started using me in all these misdirection plays and catching the ball out of the backfield, running a lot of screens, and all of a sudden my career just exploded.
Well, your athleticism helped.
Well, I mean, obviously, that's a granted. If you don't have the God-given talent, then you're at a massive disadvantage. But it's also having the right coaches, and being in the right situation. And I always found myself in the right situation.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
and it's awesome that you spent 10 years with the Giants. That's a long time with one team.
Yeah, it's rare that guys spend their entire career with one organization,
especially now.
Yeah, you don't hear that often.
No. I mean, think about. I was having this conversation with the guys on my WFAN show, Sean and Evan and Loogie. Like, who's the next running back that's going to be a star? It's going to be a Hall of Famer, and it's probably Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry's a stud.
Yeah,
I mean, he's getting close to, if not just clipped 10,000 yards rushing. He's still got a couple more years. He's going to be a 1,200 or 12,000 or 13,000 yard rusher when it's all said and done.
Right.
But he was, in my mind, a career Tennessee Titan.
Right.
Yeah.
And then last year they said, all right, we're good. They moved on from him. Now he's kicking ass with the Baltimore Ravens.
Crushing it on the Ravens.
It shows you how hard it is to stay with one team.
Yeah. And it's a business.
Of course it's a business.
I mean, we're family until we're not.
Yes. Yeah. It's a business, and it's hard. It's disappointing, but it's a business.
Yeah. Now, because of your track, I heard you ran marathons too.
Yeah,
I didn't know that about you.
That's a recent that's a recent
How
establishment. About 8 years ago is when I started that.
20. Wow,
They're still running
now. Well, it's gotten harder because I do a full 18 games for CBS, NFL on CBS. So I'm on the road from the end of August basically until the beginning of January. and most of the big marathons, the majors, the world majors, they're in the fall.
Yes.
So Chicago's in the fall, New York is in the fall.
Pete's a new marathon runner.
Right. Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
it's
my first one's this Sunday.
Boston
actually.
is actually in the spring. Which
Okay.
one are you doing?
The one in Atlantic City.
Oh, yeah.
It's my
AC.
first one, man.
I haven't done that one yet. I did
Been
do
training.
Yeah.
Been learning a lot about myself.
you learn about your
those long
your,
runs.
your mental makeup.
Yeah, I'm just
when you're 2.5 hours on the road.
just thinking.
Yeah. I got into marathons because of Amber and CC Sabathia. They have a foundation
Yeah.
called
Oh.
Pitch In.
That was the first one you did?
That was the first one I did. It was the New York City Marathon. They'd asked me to run, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, it'll be easy." I had no idea, like
right?
how to. I mean, I kind of knew how to train, just looking it up on the internet.
Yeah.
How do you train for a marathon?
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Right.
The College of YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
At College of YouTube, and I was terrible. I mean, it was 5 hours and like 18 minutes. I ran it in, and
That's probably gonna be me.
felt terrible. And then I was like, I'm never doing it again.
Wow.
And then, like a week later, I told myself, I can't wait to run another one of
Oh
these.
my
I have to do
That's
another one.
insane.
Now,
So
I ended
you're
up-
either like you two or you're like me.
Right.
Like,
One and done.
I don't want
Right.
to run a mile.
Yeah. Most
you
people are either
kidding?
one and done
Yeah.
if they try a marathon
Right.
or they just keep
They
doing
get
them.
addicted.
And so I kind of got addicted, and I eventually got down to 4 hours and 8. So I dropped an hour off my
Wow.
time, 4 hours and 18 minutes.
What
I
was
always
your
wanted
first
to
time?
go 5:18.
5:18.
And then 4:18 was my PR, also in New York. And I've always wanted to get sub 4. It's just, I just can't. I just can't
Yeah,
get
it's
there.
tough, man.
It's tough.
tougher than people think.
What
It
are you
is.
shooting for?
Well, this is so I started because last year I ran 2 halves.
Yeah.
And it's just off the rip because I need something to keep me going like competitively.
Right.
Right. I've done a bunch of other stuff, athletically. So I'm like, I got to get something to keep me going because just in the gym itself gets kind of boring.
You get
right?
bored.
Yeah,
It
of course.
becomes
So
monotonous.
I ran 2 last year. So I'm like,
2 half marathons.
2 halves.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that was nothing,
Right.
man. Let me do the full. And then I've been getting my ass kicked lately because I've been learning a lot about nutrition, right?
Yep.
Like replenishing along the way and all that stuff. So that's like a new journey for me.
Right.
So I'm just
That's
really,
the hardest part.
That's
by
the
way.
toughest part because I didn't know that after like I gotta hide food somewhere
Yeah.
and go pick it up and eat it or drink
Right.
something, right? So that's
Gotta
the
stuff
tough part
gel
to figure
packs
out.
in your underwear.
Well,
Yeah, I
the
have
gel
all that
packs,
stuff.
the gel packs are weird because they like.
Yeah, they were weird.
I mean, they kind of do the job, but they're not fulfilling.
Short-lived.
Right. It's
I
not
knew a
fulfilling.
girl that she would take gummy bears
Yeah.
and she would stuff them in her pockets.
Yeah.
And
Smart.
she said the gummy bears would like get her.
Right.
So to your question, I'm just really shooting to finish, and I'm not really worried about time so
Okay.
much. I mean, I know my time because
Yeah.
I do kind of clock it.
Right,
but I
right.
really just want to finish it to have that first accomplishment, and then like to your point too, I probably will become addicted to
Yeah.
it, and then just shoot to get in to qualify for like the
Right.
bigger marathons.
I ended up doing 15. I've
Oh,
done
shit.
15, and
Whoa.
I still want to do the.
I thought like 5.
No, I did 15. I still need to do the 3 international ones
Nice, man.
to get the. There's a big medal that they give you when you do all 6
Yeah.
world majors. So I've done New York, I've done Boston, done Chicago, and I need to do London, Tokyo, which I was going to do in 2020.
Oh, that'd be
but
awesome,
the
man.
pandemic
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
and so I missed it. And then Berlin. So I still have those 3 to
Wow.
go.
That is
Yeah.
amazing.
So eventually I'll get them done.
All right.
So depending on how I do this weekend, I'll probably shoot for maybe the New York Marathon since it's so close, and
Right.
then maybe figure it out after that.
Right.
All
If my
right.
body holds up, man, we'll see.
Yeah.
You got this. Let's talk
Yeah.
about retirement.
Yeah.
From the NFL. How was that?
Um,
What was that like?
That's a good question.
retirement was. It feels like it was a hard decision when you
Mhm.
look at it from the outside, but for me, it was really easy. I was just tired of getting beat up.
Okay.
I was tired of. I told you about Joe Carini. Not that I was tired of Joe Carini, but I was tired of like deadlifting
Mhm.
500 pounds and squatting 600 pounds
Yeah.
Yeah.
and just preparing for the grind of an NFL season.
Mhm.
And I felt myself slowing down. There were runs that used to be 60 yards and an easy touchdown, and I now getting caught at 35 yards or 40 yards. And
Right.
so I knew it was getting towards the end, and I wanted to go out on my own terms.
Yeah.
I think the other less looked at side of my retirement is I was doing so many interesting things.
Mm.
So you mentioned me in my children's books. We had written
Mhm.
12 children's
You
books
and
at this
Ronde,
point. Me
correct?
and my twin,
Yeah.
yep, had written 12 children's books.
That's awesome.
I was doing like correspondence work with Fox News,
Yeah.
working in Fox and Friends. I had all of these random yet very unique and fulfilling
Yeah.
interactions with, say, Shimon Peres, who I
Mhm.
met at a restaurant.
Wow.
And so I took a trip to Israel with him.
That's
because
amazing.
of my friendships at Fox News. I ended up having lunch with Condoleezza Rice
Mhm.
in the State Department when she
Yep,
was
I
Secretary
remember
of
that.
State, and like all of these things were happening. It just became
Mm.
interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like it was more my desire to do that than to keep getting beat up playing
Right.
football.
What
And so
was
I
your
left and
first?
went and worked for the Today Show.
Oh, that was the Today Show was your
Yeah,
first, right?
yeah.
Right.
That was my first post NFL career job.
Wasn't
was
there
the
like
Today
a
Show.
network battle for you though? I remember
Yeah,
reading something like
there
it
was a
like
little bit
Fox,
going on. Yeah,
NFL.
because I was working for Fox.
Yeah.
And the challenge with Fox is that I wanted to do both. I wanted to do sports and news. And news is easy because
Yeah.
it's right there in Midtown. But Fox Sports is on the West Coast. And so I would have been
Oh.
on the West Coast every weekend.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that. Okay.
I wasn't committed to doing that, to flying out west. And we looked at ABC for a minute, but nothing ever materialized there.
Mhm.
And then
NFL
NBC,
network?
NFL wasn't it didn't have the programming that it does now. And NBC was perfect. I knew Jeff Zucker. Our
Okay.
kids I played Little League baseball together. And ultimately I settled on working for the Today Show and a new broadcast called Football Night in America, which is still going on
Yeah.
on Sunday Night Football. And it was great. You know, I was home for most of my year.
Hmm.
I traveled to do correspondence things, like where in the world is Matt Lauer? I was in South Africa and
Oh my God.
Wow.
shark diving. And,
Wow. Man.
right. And went to a shanty town out there and traveled and did a bunch of stories, a bunch
Right.
of really fun things with the Today Show.
Which is unique because a lot of retired NFL players or even sports that go into broadcasting or news, they usually stick with sports.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, I think I got conditioned out of that
Okay.
by Fox News.
Okay.
So when I was doing Fox and Friends, we very rarely talk
Talk
sports,
sports,
at
okay.
F at all. In fact, I remember this one day, I come in and because I'd get up early. I'd have to be there at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah. I used to train a couple of people
Shush,
at Fox.
right.
So
It's an early
Yeah.
life you live.
I know Mike Woods.
Yeah, of course.
And Teresa Priolo.
And so I was up there. I was up there early, and then we're talking. We're doing an interview with the ambassador to Iraq. And I
Wow.
was like, all right, I guess I got to research what I'm asking this guy. And so like I started to think outside of this narrow lane,
Yeah.
and started seeing the world in a new perspective, and paying more attention to what was going on in the world.
Wow.
And so
That's great.
Fox kind of created an interest in me, with people outside of the sports realm.
Wow.
That's
And
really
you
cool.
also
It's-
called the Olympics, didn't you? The
Yeah,
2008 summer and
2008.
winter?
I was in
10.
2008. I was in China
Okay.
and in Beijing, and that was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Because that was the Michael Phelps
Yeah. Yeah.
Olympics where he broke all those world records.
Yep.
And I remember it was funny because we were like, man, this guy is amazing. And then these stories started coming out
Yeah.
about how the pool was an extra lane wider on each side
Right.
and twice as deep as the normal pool is. And why does that matter? Because when you swim, you reverb, like the waves.
Right.
The waves hit the side and they come back and it disrupts the water. It's not
Right.
flat water. But if you make the pool wider and you make it deeper, there's less friction on the swimmers.
okay.
And so
Oh.
I wasn't actually working for the Today Show
Right.
at the Olympics, even though we did do some correspondence work. I was working for MSNBC.
Oh.
And so we felt our job was to tell the news stories. It
Ooh.
wasn't our job to tell the Olympic glory
Right,
story.
right,
It
right.
wasn't.
Yeah.
So we would just ask them these scrutinizing questions, and then Bella Carolla, you remember him?
Yes, absolutely.
The gymnastics coach.
Mhm.
He came on our show on MSNBC one morning, and he starts talking about the Chinese gymnasts being too young, and so we're asking these questions, like trying to get follow-ups, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, in the interview. Because it was controversial.
Yeah, it was
You know what I mean?
controversial.
It was-
Yeah.
But that was our job.
Cut
Yeah.
the switch.
It's our job to like not dig, but
Yeah, dig.
tell the news story.
Yeah. Give us something
And,
spicy.
and again,
Right.
that's Fox News.
Right.
That was like that's
Right.
what I learned when I was previously working. So it was a unique experience.
That's
I enjoyed
great.
it though. And then I got to see Usain Bolt just
Oh, you did?
blow people. It was no, actually I went to two events. I went to the floor exercise at the gymnastics,
Mhm.
and for the men's gymnastics, and then I went to the 100-meter final,
Wow.
and it was like awe-inspiring watching that man run. Because I was a track guy.
Yeah.
I wanted.
I was going to say,
wanted to see
I
mean,
wanted to be in the Olympics. That's what
Right?
I wanted to
Yeah,
do.
that's
And then
amazing.
to see Usain
To
Bolt
run against
just,
Usain.
no, never. I was never that fast. I was more of a jumper, but I'm in awe of the athleticism
Yeah.
of track and field athletes.
Me too.
Same.
Yeah.
Track and field's the best in Olympics.
I
Yeah, I love
100% agree. It's my favorite sport.
Mine too. All right, let's talk about something fun.
Okay.
I want to talk about you being Don in Kinky Boots. Because I heard from a friend of mine that like through the pandemic, like you were like belting out songs.
Oh yeah.
In his basement for practice.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Is this true?
It is true. So
I'm loving this. Let's go.
How did this come about? I mean, think of the sequence. They had asked my manager if I wanted to do a walk-on role.
Okay.
So Broadway sometimes does walk-on roles.
Yeah.
So they'll get a celebrity and they'll have them learn a dance or a song, and they'll come out for one performance and just, hey, I'm here.
Right.
And it's cool. And they'd asked me to do that, and I wasn't really interested in it. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, I love Broadway, but that's not interesting.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, Kinky Boots is about to close. So it's going to close the following May or June. I
Mhm.
think May. It's going to close in May. And they just want to try to get a hit out of it, like a couple more pops.
Yeah.
And Danny, who plays Don
Mhm.
originally, was taking a hiatus to do a show at the Paper Mill Playhouse
Okay.
in New Jersey.
Yeah, Milburn, right?
And so, in Melbourne. And so they asked me, well, you didn't want to do the walk-on role, but would you be interested in doing a full-time role of Don for 6 or 7 weeks?
Yeah.
And I was like, I would love that. And so right
Got my call.
after the NFL season ended, I started rehearsing. So
Oh my God, I
it was
love it.
January, I want to say like 6th or
Okay.
something, or 8th. I started going to these rehearsals, and I had to learn the script. The blocking was the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Like learning where to be
Yeah.
and where to stand and how to, move and manipulate the stage, because the actors move the stage.
Right. I
Even
would have
though-
thought the boots were the hardest thing.
Right. Well, I'll get to those in a
Okay.
second, but it was learning the blocking
Okay.
it was time consuming. And then learning the dancing was hard, but doing it in 6-inch stilettos, thigh high,
Yeah.
red boots
Oh,
was
come on.
was
I don't know.
tough.
That's
You made it
funny,
look
man.
pretty easy.
But
I didn't
I
know
gotta
that, actually.
gotta tell you
That's great.
and I didn't stop working. So
Right.
I was still doing my show. It was Tiki and Tierney at that point, and my show would end at 6. So I was 3 to 6. No. Yeah, I was 3 to 6. And so I'd get on the train, I'd fly up to Times Square, and then just walk over and get there right before the show started, and then do the show. It was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life.
Really?
One, because of just performing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a natural performer. I like
Okay.
to talk. I love to sing. As Hoyman, I'm sure,
Yeah.
told you. During the pandemic, we're sitting in the basement. We have nothing to do.
Right.
We're barely allowed to hang
I'll
out with one
perform.
another.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, let's just bring out the karaoke machine.
Right.
But that show had a meaning about acceptance
Mhm.
and
One of my
and
favorite Broadway
believing
shows.
that people can change and be different.
Yeah.
And so my character, the character of Don, was the thesis.
Yeah.
Right. He is the one who, as the head of the factory, didn't want the Kinky Boots to be made in the factory. He had a perception about people,
Right.
and people who are different. And so the last line is, "You change the world when you change your mind."
Mm.
Now, my character changes his mind, and every show, I would walk up 8th Avenue, and I'd see the line from around the corner. So it's at the, I forget what the theater is, but it was on 44th Street.
Mhm.
The line would be around the corner. And so I'm walking up 8th Avenue, and I see the line.
Oh my God.
And after about 2 weeks, as I'm walking up the line, I smile when I see these people.
You're like, they're there
And
for me.
no, not even that. It has nothing to do with me. As I see them, I'm like, in 3 hours, you're gonna be standing on your feet, singing a song that you may or may not know, and you're gonna feel so amazing.
Wow.
And so at the end of the show, the last song is Just Be who you wanna be, celebrate yourself, triumphantly. And so
Love it.
by the end of the show, everybody's singing it. Like everybody's in the
They're standing up.
obviously we are,
Yeah.
as all of the actors on stage, but everybody in the audience is singing it, and you're just moved
The
by
energy.
it. The energy is amazing.
Ridiculous.
And so the guy who played Lola in my run was this guy named Callum Francis. He's from Australia. He's gorgeous man, and he dressed up. He looked amazing. And as a man, he looks amazing.
I love it.
And we got along really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to sit and talk with him, and I'd be like, man, Callum, like the emotion I get from this show it's overwhelming. Like I almost wanted to cry every day,
my God.
every performance. I
Wow.
felt like welling up and crying because of the like emotional expenditure.
Yeah.
But it was also like I was getting it back. And
Yeah.
he's like, you know why you feel that way? He said, because we're teaching or we're preaching love and acceptance, and we're pushing that out into the audience. We're just pushing it into the audience for the entire show, with all the amazing songs and the performances, and then eventually, like a tidal wave, it comes back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
as we're at the end of the show and everybody's singing, all that love that we pushed out is coming back on
It's being
stage.
poured back into
And
you.
so it's like it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so
You're gonna make me cry.
I don't I mean I get emotional just thinking about
Yeah.
it because of how meaningful that show was to me and
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
like all of the people that I met. And I mean,
I'm gonna look at every Broadway show different now.
70% of the cast were, I mean, they were actual drag queens.
Yeah.
They were,
Yeah, it's one of my favorite shows.
right.
Yeah.
They were in same-sex relationships, and not having been in that kind of environment,
yeah.
it felt so loving.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, I loved that show. I
And-
absolutely loved it.
great.
And you were back in another New York institution.
Yes, yes. I was on the Great White Way. And so I did it for 7 weeks, and I left the production. It was sad, but I loved it.
Would you ever
never
do
forget
Broadway
it.
again?
I would, but it would have to be something meaningful.
Okay.
It
Nice.
would.
Yeah.
So Callum's boyfriend
Mhm.
at the time was his guy named Ainsley,
Mhm.
and Ainsley was Aladdin on Broadway
Oh,
at the
wow.
same time. And so my daughter loves Aladdin.
Aladdin,
She's
aw.
like, "Oh, I want to see Aladdin. Can you get Ainsley to get me tickets?" So
Mhm.
Callum, who loves my daughter, got Ainsley to get us tickets to Aladdin,
Nice.
and he was like, "You'll like it, but it's different."
Okay.
And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Just go and you'll see."
Yeah.
And so we went and we sat in the audience. We go backstage afterwards, and I see Callum with Ainsley, and I'm like, "You know what, Callum, you're right." And he said, "You know why? Because it's just entertainment.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
It's not
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
the message isn't the
Yeah.
same. It's just entertainment. It's
Right.
great entertainment.
Right.
It's one of the great shows on Broadway,
Absolutely.
but it's entertainment.
Yeah.
Whereas Kinky Boots was like just a message that you were sending, and it was cool.
It
I
was
mean, I loved it.
cool.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
See that? Now on our show, we are geared towards aspiring and current entrepreneurs. You
Yeah.
are an amazing entrepreneur, investments in tons of businesses.
I've done some fun things.
You've done some amazing things. Can you give us some tips for aspiring and current entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
And then we're going to get into talk about some of your businesses.
Right. So I think the most important thing that I've learned is to partner correctly
Mm,
and not have pride in ownership,
okay.
meaning I have an idea. I see the finish line, and that's the only way to get there,
Okay.
because you're going to find that you're often wrong, and there's another path to get to where you're trying to get to. And I think the thing that I learned most was hire people who are different than you,
Mm.
right? Have different skill sets and have different opinions, or and even not even hire, just partner with people
Yeah.
who have
Right.
different, approaches to the same goal. And ultimately, that's how you fail quickly and find the right path.
Absolutely.
And so,
I like that.
I mean, I was lucky because of relationships that I was able to make over the years. Just I lived in New York City when I was playing football. I didn't live in Jersey or in the suburbs out on the island or up in Connecticut or wherever in Westchester. So I was in the mix amongst everything that was going on. I was in Manhattan, on the Upper East Side.
Okay.
And so I just ran across people, right? I always tell people I had access to this like rarefied, I don't know, group that I didn't belong in, but because I was a football player,
come on.
Right? It's like, hey, come on. It's like someone once told me, it's like, you know how you make it after your career? And I'm like, how? And I'll never forget it. He was like, hang out with the rich kids, not the cool kids.
Yeah.
Right?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, it seems like you just grew organically after football. Where I think some athletes, right, they maybe struggle with, what do I do next?
I think that's slowly changing. And I think it's because of the awareness that social media has brought, right? That there are opportunities out there. But when I was coming up, there wasn't a path, right? There was no direction unless you had a specific thing in mind. Like, I forget the guy who was a doctor. He played for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm forgetting his name right now. But like, he went to school to be a doctor, and he wasn't
he like from Hawaii or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I remember him.
Or maybe it's Canada. I think he might have been Canada because he went to Canada during the pandemic.
Yeah, he was French.
Yeah,
you're
right. That's right. He quit.
And he was an operating doctor. Yeah,
so
I
he
remember
quit football during the pandemic and went to help Canada. I mean, it was.
Oh my God.
And so unless you're that, like where you have this dream and this focus on being something else, and football kind of gets in the way, you play the game for a while. You get stuck in that.
Yes.
You get stuck in football, and you get stuck, or whatever the sport is, baseball, basketball, etc. And when you retire, it's like life hits you really quickly.
Right.
But because I lived in the city, I felt like I was always walking this parallel path with the NFL. So I'm playing this game, but I'm also like picking up these other opportunities and relationships, and eventually I was able to write my own script when I wanted to walk away from the game and get into something else.
Now, I know we have a bunch of questions and we don't have limited time, but is there like something set up in the NFL where I know they think they guide the younger players to make good financial choices and kind of like mold them to not for interviews and stuff. But is there something that's set in place for, hey, listen, at the end of your career, you have these opportunities, maybe explore those?
No, there isn't. There should be.
Right.
There are guys who have done it individually, like set up these networking groups, and I think the local Players Association, Retired Players Association chapters, they can help with those things. But you got to realize when you're a professional athlete, you have this pride, almost hubris, where you feel like you don't need help, like that.
Right.
I've had success, I can figure it out. I don't need you to direct me. But it's those that swallow that pride that often have the most success, because they realize they don't know it all. Kind of similar to the business advice I was saying. Like, don't think that you can get there on your own. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. In fact, for most of our lives as athletes, we've been coached, right? We've been directed towards success.
You've had help,
right? Yeah. You've had help. So when you retire, it is absolutely no different. It's the same thing.
I agree.
And to some of the things that I got into, like, part of that was relationships, but it was also opportunity. So right when I retired, I was friendly with Steve Ross, who owns Miami Dolphins, related companies. He has Hudson Yards, a big project that's now massive over there. That was all him. But his early successes were in affordable housing. And so he was looking to purchase a portfolio out of Southwest Virginia, which included the town I grew up in, Roanoke. And so he asked me to come in and be a partner on this affordable housing project. And it was, it was like, I didn't know what I was doing, but it was something that was interesting to me, because I subsequently found out that one of the buildings or one of the complexes he was buying is where I grew up.
No.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't even know that we were in affordable housing.
Wow.
And that's a testament to my mom making us feel like we weren't poor, even though we really
like
were.
You didn't have. Yeah.
But I remember going back down there and I was like, wait, I grew up here, right? This is affordable housing. And so we ended up buying this portfolio, and I remember learning about all of this like tax credit equity and how you finance these things, and then the rent roll comes back to you, and it just creates this annuity essentially over years because it's government assisted.
Yeah. And
the challenge though was that the timing was so bad. So you guys may not remember, but in 2008, 2007, into 2007, 2008,
crash,
it was a serious market correction, they like to call it, correction. So that tax credit equity went from 97 cents on the dollar. This is the money that you need to purchase the affordable housing unit and then rehab it. So instead of getting 97 or so cents on the dollar, it was now like 68 cents on the dollar.
Right.
And so there's this massive gap from what you need to purchase and what you have. And the only other way to do it is to get lending, to get debt.
Right.
But nobody's giving anybody any money at this point as well. And so these deals just kind of like die on the vine. And I remember when the crash or correction first happened, we're like, oh man, we are screwed. But luckily we had a great partner.
Okay.
And Steve personally guaranteed the deal. So it was his money. It wasn't tax credit equity. It wasn't debt. He personally guaranteed it with his own funds, and ultimately he made well. But it allowed us to survive that deal. Otherwise, we would have. I mean,
that would have been bad.
My first entrepreneurial endeavor would have been, toast.
Right.
And so we ultimately got out of that deal, and like we survived it. And then fast forward about 4 years. 2012. I'm not working at Fox or NFL for the NFL anymore. I'm not doing NBC. I'm really not doing anything. Just going through a bad divorce. And my buddy who I went to college with, Rick Gerson, says to me, "Teak, I want you to go have a cigar with my brother." And I'm like, I didn't know you had a brother. And his brother was Mark Gerson, who founded a company called Gerson Limmer Group, GLG. And it's the largest collection of experts in the world, basically. And they advise on a lot of different things. And so we're having this conversation at Club Macanudo, smoking a cigar. And we end up talking about what you were just alluding to.
Right.
Like these issues that former athletes have when they leave the game. They've lost touch with their communities to an extent. They've been replaced immediately on the field by whoever is, now the running back or wide receiver or whatever it may be. And not too long after, they get replaced in people's minds.
True.
And so they're kind of just lost. Like they have skills and they have stories and they have a connectivity, but there's no way to monetize it.
Right. I agree.
And so it got us talking about creating a business, which ultimately became Thusio. And Thusio was an event business where you could do whatever you want to go to lunch, pick a basketball game, go to a movie, like anything you could think of with an athlete. And it was via the internet. It was a marketplace, so to speak. Now, in our minds, we were creating a tech company. And it was creating these transactions online so that we as the company didn't have to touch everyone, right? If we have to touch every transaction, meaning, all right, Bob's going to meet you at this basketball court. You're going to play pickup basketball for 2 hours, and this is the transaction price. If we had to touch everyone, we could never scale.
Right.
It had to happen seamlessly.
Yeah.
And that was the challenge. That was the tech challenge. How do we make this happen without touching everyone? Otherwise, we're not going to grow. And that's when we had to pivot.
Yeah.
So just as a quick aside, our first investor in that business was Steve Ross.
Wow.
Okay.
And so the relationship from 4 years ago ended up paying a dividend forward.
That's amazing.
It's just part of life.
Yeah.
Like there's a circle.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
That happens in the professional business world, entrepreneurial world. And so we had to pivot a lot of times because we were touching every transaction. And so it was interesting. Like it got a lot of press, earned media, et cetera.
Right.
But we couldn't really scale it. We were touching too many transactions. We were basically in the middle of every one of our transactions. And so we got lucky because the Super Bowl came to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Super Bowl came to New York, there was this desire to do big events. And one of the clients that we ended up picking up was Ernst & Young.
Mm.
Now, I knew Ernst & Young
Wow.
because one of our really good friends, Dan Kaplan, was on the board there, and I was on the board of the Fresh Air Fund with him. And so he was talking about his problem, not his problem, but his business situation regarding the Super Bowl. Were they going to spend whatever it was, a $500 million or something, $300,000 to be a title sponsor for the Super Bowl? Or would they rather do a bunch of events with big names like Joe Montana and Phil Simms and whoever at their offices, curated by us? And so they bid at it because they could never get their clients to come to their office. But by doing these events, they were able to get their clients who were in town for the Super Bowl to come to their office. And so we ended up doing 5 or 6 events for Ernst & Young, and it launched our new business.
Got it.
Oh wow,
Which was a executive club. And so we'd have these events with 30 or 40 executives who became members. Eventually we had, 300, 400 members in New York, and we grew it outside of New York. So we were in Los Angeles and Texas and Dallas and Boston.
Wow.
And so it created this way to monetize events. And that's how Thusio became what it was. We eventually split off into another company called Julius, which was a SaaS marketing company.
Okay.
So if, say, Coca-Cola wanted to do a local event in I don't know, Vermont, but they needed a skier who was an Olympic champion and had this number of social followers, they could do that deal with that talent without having to go through all of the papering and agenting that goes into that. And
is that still the model today for it?
It is.
Okay.
For Julius, it's gotten a ton of competition.
Okay.
Right.
But we were one of the first to do that.
Okay.
So we got, it's been a lot of pivoting.
Okay.
And a lot of recognizing the opportunity
I thought the company
in the
was
moment.
more or correct me if I'm wrong, to get athletes in as speakers or guest speakers.
Well, we also do that.
You do that as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It almost serves as an agent.
Yeah.
For those that
That's
don't
amazing.
have the agent anymore. Now the good thing is, when the pandemic happened, it killed a lot of. We were a live event company.
Yeah.
So it killed our business essentially. But there was an amazing product that came about, and then everybody has used it. Zoom.
It's called Cannabis?
No, it's called Zoom.
Okay.
No.
We're not getting there.
No, it's
Because
called
that was
Zoom.
my amazing in the
Right.
pandemic.
Right. I'm sure a lot of people's was. Zoom allowed us to do virtual events.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
And so because we ramped it up really quickly, we started, instead of doing 1 or 2 events a month in each of our markets, we were doing 2 or 3 a day
Via Zoom.
via Zoom.
Scaled it like
Wow.
that.
And so we scaled it. And so while the margins were much smaller, obviously, the volume became huge.
Yeah.
And it made us an attractive acquisition for a company like Triller, who ultimately acquired us.
Wow.
Because they needed to fill in their revenue. So Triller used to do those fights, right? Those big box, $70 million, for one day events. But that revenue is lumpy. So you get it here and then you don't see it again for another 5 or 6 months. So they started acquiring some companies to fill in their revenue stream, and Thusio was one of them. They ultimately acquired Julius as well.
Okay.
And it's a success. It's been a success.
That is great.
So
That is really cool that you were able to do that.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. It was a lot of hard work.
And you're also in the cannabis space, correct?
I was.
No longer.
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't.
Because we were looking for some gifts.
Yeah, it was a company, as a group I started or helped start, called Grove Group, and what we were really focused on, because cannabis, before it became like ubiquitous everywhere, it was very specific to states.
Right.
Like certain states had laws that would allow you to create entities, whether it was a grow or whether it was a distribution center. but New Jersey was one of the hardest. And so we were focusing on Jersey, waiting for New Jersey to improve. And Governor, I think it was Murphy. Yeah, Governor Murphy put it to referendum. And meaning we as people, we vote on it.
Yeah.
And it passed. But there were existing laws which made it almost impossible to open a dispensary or grow that wasn't equidistant in the state. So what does that mean? So if you had a distribution or a dispensary here in Tinton Falls, I would have to be equidistant away from you to open my own.
That's crazy.
And so it became hard to operate.
I remember that period of time where there was a lot of moving parts. We just started to figure out. A lot of people were in that pool waiting.
They were in that pool waiting, but they also were kind of trying to put them in the same spots.
Exactly.
And so it happened, and I forget the name of the dispensary, but it happened down at the shore, and then someone put one like 5 or 6 miles away. They sued them.
Oh my God.
And so it hung everything up.
Yeah.
And so the business became unmanageable.
Yeah.
And so we backed out of it.
Right.
And so we dabbled around with it for a while and started looking at how can we broker things in Colorado and, just distribute them back here. But as you guys probably know, the cannabis world is like very insular to the specific state.
Yep.
And it's almost impossible, probably better now, even though I'm out of it for a while, to move across state lines. And so it became difficult.
Yeah. What else you got going on, Tiki?
That's it for right now. I mean, the beauty of where I am in my life right now is that I have a radio show on WFAN.
Evan and Tiki.
2 to 6:30 every day.
Yep.
I do games on the weekend for CBS, and then I'm raising kids.
Love it.
It's it keeps me busy enough. There'll be another opportunity at some point.
Absolutely.
To be an entrepreneur, but just waiting.
And with that, we like to ask our guests to give us a gem. You've given us a lot, but give us a gem. One going out doesn't have to be anything for entrepreneurs. Just could be a life gem.
It's funny. I get asked often, like, what do you want your legacy to be? And it's mostly they're talking about football.
Yeah.
But
have you seen Kinky Boots?
I know. But it's kind of along that lines. I think doing a Broadway show and doing WFAN where I interact with sports fans on a daily basis, it's taught me that it's not like what my legacy is. It's how do you make people feel?
Wow.
Yeah.
And so if legacy, which I think is an overused word, if my legacy is going to be anything, it's I want to say I made people smile and feel happy. Kinky Boots did that. My time with the Giants did that.
Yeah.
I think WFAN does the same. So,
you as a person do that too.
Yeah. I smile all the time. People always ask me, why you smile all the time?
Do.
Say, because when I smile, you smile. Seriously, smile at somebody.
Yeah,
I promise you they'll smile
Either
back.
that or they'll run.
Right. That happened, by the way, when I first came to New York. I'd be like, hey, how you doing? And they're like, do I know you?
Well, you're also in New York.
Exactly.
Why are you smiling at me, man?
Right. Exactly. Do I know you? Something funny.
Tiki, we've been going back and forth trying to get you on this show for a while. You know that, and I'm so happy this finally worked out. We appreciate your time coming in here. We know you're a very busy man.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
And with that, we want to let you know.
Too, by the
Thanks,
way.
man.
Yeah, Pete. Just hang in there.
I'm gonna do.
Don't quit.
Exactly.
Whatever you do, finish.
I'm gonna crawl there.
With that, we want to let you know we're still on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And if this is something that resonates with you, join our community because the best is yet to come.
Yes.